and like burn the building down.
It's definitely going to burn down at some point.
Like that's, right, like I exert a force, but if I want to change a big thing, my force isn't enough, so I'm going to have to persuade lots of other people. And how do you persuade somebody? How do you make someone change who doesn't want to change? Well, you have to kind of force them to change. You have to make them change. How do you do that? Well, I could appeal to their self-interest. I could pay them to do this work. I could make them feel guilty or ashamed of themselves for their complicity in the world-destroying machine. I could scare them with the dire consequences of inaction. All of these things, but all of these things are insufficient. And how do I get a loud enough voice to do that when there are so many competing voices? What's my plan, Charles? You know, what's your plan to make this happen? There is no practical plan in a universe of force, where we are separate selves in a world of other. And that's your experience. Separate selves in the world of other. Everybody's out to get you, you know? If I'm separate from you, then your well-being is different from my well-being. Your good fortune is separate from my good fortune. In fact, we're competitors, so your bad fortune might be my good fortune. And it sure seems like society works that way. You know? 500 job applicants for 15 jobs. And if you're ahead of me on the totem pole and something bad happens to you, that's good for me. And it's built into the financial system too, which I'm not going to talk too much about tonight. But the system is set up so that there's never enough money and that we're always in competition. You know, it would be like we decided, okay, guys, we're going to get to know each other. We're going to play a game of musical chairs. And so, you know, 50 people, 45 chairs. And if you lose, then you don't get a place to live and your kids don't eat. So dire consequences. Start the music, let's play, let's get to know each other. Like what kind of dynamic, what kind of relationship is that going to set up? We're going to be like elbowing each other, you know, and like trying to grab a chair, except for maybe a few self-sacrificing people who give someone else their chair and then they're left out in the cold. And I'm not quite that self-sacrificing, I'm not quite that noble. I'm going to get a chair because after all I have kids, you know, I deserve a chair. And there we are, pushing and shoving and elbowing, and the economist over here in the corner observing it, and the evolutionary biologist observing it. They're like, yep, there's human nature for you, competitive, dog eat dog. That's the way that the world is. But that's just because there's 45 chairs and 50 people. What would human nature be if there were 50 chairs and 50 people? And every chair was a little bit different, and every set of buttocks was a little bit different. And so you're like, yeah, you know, this chair isn't good for me. Would this be a better chair for you? And helping each other out. More for me is more for you. What would happen if we set up the system like that? Anyway, so yeah, so the money system is just one of many, many institutions that enforces separation and tells us in a million ways that we're separate and that the universe is just like this. If you assume that, yeah, that's the way it is, then your power to change things is very, very limited if you're separate from this impersonal universe outside yourself. But you know what? Most cultures didn't believe that that was the nature of the universe. They believed that the self reflected the whole universe. That everything that happened in the world was happening to you. And vice versa. Therefore, everything you do has cosmic significance. This seems profoundly unscientific, except that science is changing. And now there are many new sciences that are telling us in many different ways that we're not separate beings in a universe of other. I'm not sure what I'll go into now, quantum mechanics. No, I'm going to talk about the theory of morphic resonance, which was developed by Rupert Sheldrake, among other people. And it basically says that if a change happens in one place, it creates a field of change that allows that change to happen more easily everywhere else. And he gives the example of, this is in my book, I hope it's not too repetitive for people. He gives the example of I think it was a sugar alcohol, xylitol or something like that. And chemists back in the early 20th century, they were trying to get it to crystallize. Because then they could use it as a food additive. It would be really great, if they could get it to crystallize, but they couldn't do it. They tried everything. Different temperature, different pressure, different catalysts. Couldn't make it crystallize. But finally, one lab somewhere, like New Zealand or something like that, got it to crystallize. And shortly thereafter, labs all over the world could easily make it crystallize, no matter what technique they used. It was as if the substance learned how to do it. And so he gives this as an example of a general principle. So, if that's the case, if that is a general principle, then all of these small things that we do, even when it seems that they couldn't make a difference, are actually creating a field for that kind of change to happen everywhere. It might be, geez, the other day, I could hang out with my friend and just hold space for him as he goes through this really hard journey, where it's just like on a knife's edge. Is he going to blow up, and go to war against his spouse, or is he going to hold peace, And I'm committed to helping him. And I said, call me anytime. And I'm sure I'm going to be spending a lot of time with him, just for this one person's well-being. Now, the calculating part of me might say, Charles, if you're really serious about saving this planet, contributing to the positive evolution of this planet, you're wasting your time on one person. You should be writing articles for The Guardian that'll reach tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. Do the math, So that voice says basically sacrifice what's right in front of your face for this kind of instrumental end, this calculable effect. But guess what? Where did we learn that mentality? We learned that from the money world, where you sacrifice what your heart is telling you to do for this abstract goal. And I don't think that transferring that mentality onto something else is a really very deep kind of revolution. It's not going to... We have to begin to trust something else. That, in that moment, when I'm with that friend, and you all have this kind of experience, it feels like the most important thing in the world right now. I don't care about anything else. Maybe you're with, someone close to you who's sick, and you're just being with them, and being with them, and being with them. Does it matter whether, suppose they died then? Would you be like, well, that was a waste of time. They were going to die anyway. No. That's the most important thing in the world. Is that a feeling that we need to deny with our reason in order to pursue what our calculations tell us is important? That's not the kind of universe I want to live in. I think we have to listen to that more. So there's this other logic that actually governs the world. And one way to speak of it is with amorphic fields. Another way to speak of it is that self mirrors all. Anything that changes in yourself creates a change in all, because we're not really separate. When we step into that logic, then the situation on this planet is no longer hopeless, because things can change in ways that we have no understanding of. And you step into something, and the most unexpected things happen that you couldn't predict. I met this guy who's out west. He said, I want to give you my most precious possession. And he gave me this brick. It was like this artistically created brick. And he told me the story of the brick. There was a lake in California that was being threatened by development, and it was being drained. It was getting smaller every year because they were pumping out all the groundwater. And he was like all the environmentalists were trying to save it, but it was just impossible against the developers, you know. So this artist, he decided he was going to make bricks that basically said save the lake, you know, and had a map of the lake shrinking and stuff. And he gave one as a gift to some city official or some legislator or something like that. And the brick sat on that guy's desk. And every time he looked up at it, it kind of pricked his conscience. And eventually he pushed through these regulations that saved the lake. The artist did not have a plan to make that happen. He was not going to kind of manipulate this guy and play upon his guilt or anything like that. He was just creating these beautiful things because he loved the lake. That was it. But one thing happened after another after another. And I don't know if you've had that experience in your life of walking an invisible path where you don't know how the next thing is going to work out until your foot actually falls down on it. Like Indiana Jones crossing the chasm, you know, and there's something that appears, and then he takes his next step, it looks like he's going to fall down the chasm, but then something else appears under that foot, you know, and he walks across, like things just appearing, you know, you just appearing at the right moment, the right person showing up at the right time, being in the right place, and you become able to accomplish things that you have no idea how to do. You had no idea how to get from point A to point B, but somehow you arrive there. Like, how does that happen? And if that happens, what else is possible? That's yeah, it's a sign of a different logic that actually rules the world. But you know, like I was saying before, it's so new to think in that way that little voices tell me I'm crazy to trust in that. They say that I'm naive. And that's why I need a community like this, and that's why I think we really need each other to begin listening to that new logic. It also helps, and I think you were saying that, one of you guys was saying that, it also helps that the old logic, even if you buy into it, it doesn't work very well anymore. You know, like back when I was a kid, if you basically obeyed the rules, like there was this promise, you know, you get good grades in junior high, so you get into the honors classes in high school. And if you do well in those and get good grades and have a high GPA, then you get into a good college. And if you do well on that and build your resume, you know, then you're going to get, there's this kind of progression, and then you get a good job, you know, and there's this beautiful life where everything works and the system is fundamentally fair. And the planet is moving in the right direction, and society is moving in the right direction, and science and technology are making the world better and better, and you can be a part of it if you apply yourself. And if you don't succumb to bad things, you know, like drugs or various character flaws. And there's some problems, you know, and there's some injustices, but we're on the road to solving these. And when I was a kid, you could believe in that, and you could participate in it, and it kind of worked. You know, if you got a college degree, you would probably get a good job in the 60s, in the 70s. It was almost guaranteed. Today, even if you buy into it and you believe in it wholeheartedly, you graduate from college, and what do you have? $30,000 of debt and still no job. So like, oh, I guess maybe I should go to grad school. Graduate from there, you have $70,000 in debt and still no job. Or maybe you get a job and your heart isn't in it, and you're feeling, I wasn't put on earth to do this, but you're locked into it, you're trapped. So, and maybe you don't even have, maybe you feel trapped, but you don't have the courage to step out. Which is okay, because like my friend, if you don't have the courage to do it, it'll happen anyway. You get fired, you get sick, have some kind of nervous breakdown. This old world, this old womb is contracting like a womb and expelling us. And some of us get expelled first. And we're in this new world, and it's like we're like, I don't know, like little tadpoles that hatch from the frog's eggs. And we swim around, and at first we don't see the other tadpoles. But now we're starting to come together. And then, I'm mixing metaphors here, but then as the old world cracks open, and begins to expel more and more people, and it's inevitable as our systems break down, then we're here to greet them. And we're here to offer some sanity and say, yeah, you're not crazy for making this choice. And it's going to be okay. And here's some of what I've learned.